Just in case something does go wrong, or in case you can't make it through the whole call, please do check out our website at cottrillsoperahouse.org. We are recording this meeting, and we'll post a link to the video after the call. I do want to kind of start with a preliminary, what would you call it? A preliminary disclaimer. There is a lot of uncertainty in the performing arts world about COVID-19, but it's fair to say that the pandemic has been devastating for theaters. And you might be thinking, who even considers rebuilding and opening a theater in this environment? We think it's safe to say that the renovation of Cottrill's Opera House will be completed well into a post-COVID world in which the virus is under control and social distancing restrictions have eased. So with those disclaimers out of the way, I want to introduce our presenters this evening. Again, my name is Matt Hogger. I've been a Tucker County resident since 2012. My day job is as a communications manager for a corporate real estate company, and I've been involved with the Opera House project in various ways since 2015. I'm currently serving as the president of the Opera House board. I fell in love with this building from the very first time I walked into it back in 2012. And since then, I've been dreaming about what its restoration could mean for our community. Susan Callahan and Dave Esch will also be presenting tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves when we get to their sections. I want to recognize Ross Hoppy, who's done a tremendous amount of work to make this call happen and is our producer downstairs in the Opera House. Also want to thank many others from our board, including Bobby Snyder, Martin Williams, Don Black. This has definitely been a team effort, all led by volunteers all along the way. All right, so let's get into it. This is what we're hoping to cover this evening. First, we'll give a very brief overview of the building's history and our mission to restore it. Then we'll review the market study that we did last year, talking about why we did it, what we learned, and what we think it means for this project. And finally, we'll share with you some exciting next steps that are actually already underway, and we'll close by inviting you to share your questions. You can ask questions throughout the meeting by typing them into the chat on Zoom. To access the chat, click the speech bubble icon in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If Zoom just isn't your thing, it's not really my thing either. No worries. Feel free to email your questions to info@cottrillsoperahouse.org. That email address is here on the screen now, and we'll collect it and bring all the questions together for our Q&A at the end. Ross is monitoring those channels and will queue up those questions for us at the closing part of our call. For those who are new to this project, new to Thomas, new to Cottrill's Opera House, I want to give a very brief history of the building. The Opera House was built well over a century ago in 1902 as a vaudeville theater by a former mine superintendent, Hiram Cottrill, who became a saloon owner and owned the saloon in the storefront downstairs. When the Prohibition era arrived, the saloon revenue stream obviously dried up. So Hiram Cottrill sold the theater to the Sutton family in the 19-teens, and they converted it to show silent films. And they would own and operate the Opera House as a movie theater for nearly half a century. Tucker County's population declined throughout the 20th century, and by the 1960s, television was competing for the audience's attention, and the theater ultimately closed for good in 1977. In the late 70s and early 80s, snowmelt and rain infiltrated the building and caused some serious damage to the brickwork, to the mortar, to the beams. The basement filled with water, and in the brutal mountain winters of Tucker County, ice formed inside the building and wreaked havoc. The stabilization and renovation work proceeded in stops and starts in the decades since the 80s. The roof was replaced, the foundation was reinforced, a scaffold was erected behind me in the main auditorium to bear the weight of the roof so that the all brick exterior walls could be repaired. There's a fire stair that was built on the building's north side, and the street level storefronts beneath me were renovated for community use. In the spring of 2019, so 18 months ago or so, a reconstituted, and I would say re-energized Opera House board kick-started the project back into active development. Here's our current mission statement. We want to restore Cottrill's Opera House to its historic role. We want it to be a performing arts venue, a community center, and cultural hub as it always was, driving sustainable economic development for Tucker County and for the entire Potomac Highlands region. Well, that sounds great, but how do you do it? We knew and we know what the end goal is, but the steps to get there seemed uncertain to us back in spring of 2019. Many of us were very new to the project. We didn't have that long history, and we weren't sure what to do next. So we entered an exploration phase. As eager as we were to finalize the physical design of the building, we realized that we weren't really sure what the community actually needed from this space. How could we design the Opera House when we didn't even know what it would be used for? What sort of events would happen here? Who would run the building and its programming after the renovation? As a way to kick off this sort of conversation, we reached out to Dave Clark, the executive director for the Woodlands Development Group down in Elkins. Dave graciously agreed to run a roadmap planning workshop for us back in March of 2019. Dave encouraged us to think critically and practically in terms of dollars and cents. What would the operating budget for a facility like this look like in 2022 or 2023 when the building had been restored? How would our organization or the organization that would run the building break even, stay in the black, keep the lights on? After all, remember, back in the 60s and 70s, the building was a movie theater and that became unprofitable. So Dave encouraged us to really think carefully about what would be different this time around. On the one hand, we knew that the local economy had changed pretty dramatically. Storefronts that had been vacant for years were opening back up. The arts were driving what would you call it, a hyper-local economic resurgence here in Tucker County. But that doesn't guarantee success. We wanted to think seriously about what this new community, this present day community, could support. What sorts of events would keep us in the black? What expenses could we expect for running performing arts events? Licensing movies, staffing the ticket counter, selling those tickets, concessions, and on and on. It became obvious to us that we needed help answering these sorts of questions, these industry-specific questions about running a performing arts venue. So it was time to do a little bit more homework. We entered what you might call a research phase in the summer of last year. First thing, we sent a representative to the League of Historic American Theaters Regional Conference, where we started to get our heads around the challenges and opportunities of running a theater like ours. And next, we decided that we needed an expert's guidance. We started looking for a theater-minded consultant who could help us answer some of these fundamental questions. Fortunately for us, we also received a generous grant from the Benedum Foundation with which we could conduct this research work. We interviewed several candidates and eventually settled on historic theater consultants run by Herb Stratford. Herb was well recommended by our peers from the League of Historic American Theaters, and his proposal fit our needs well. So Herb and his marketing lead visited Tucker County in December of 2019. They met with a wide variety of local stakeholders, and that's Herb at the top left of this picture, chatting with local business owners about how the Opera House can help support the local economy once it's renovated. Herb and his team also conducted a public survey in January of 2020, and they delivered their final report in May of this year. So what did that report tell us? That's the main reason you're here, right? For that, I'm going to hand things over to Susan Callahan, a member and fellow officer on the Opera House board. Susan?
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Callahan, and I've been an Opera House board member for 4 years. But before moving to Canaan Valley, I worked with the Pittsburgh Glass Center, helping to establish an artist community in some Pittsburgh communities. My job was to introduce glass art and artists to area retailers and to promote sales in locally made glass art. When I moved to Tucker County, I was pleasantly surprised to find an artist community already established. And it offered incredible galleries and performance venues, as well as had a huge variety of artistic talent, including musicians, actors, poets, painters, potters, photographers, just to name a few. So to continue promoting local artists, I joined the Art Spring Board. That's our nonprofit organization supporting Tucker County arts, and that hosts the annual Art Spring Festival Memorial Day weekend. I also joined the Opera House Board to help figure out how the Opera House could be turned into a sustainable operation while at the same time supporting local artists. And that's where the public survey comes in. As Matt described, the survey was conducted by Historic Theater Consultants, the group we hired. It was made available online in January of this year for 3 weeks. It was promoted via social media and our Opera House website. And the survey results exceeded our expectations, even our consultants' expectations. We got a whopping 632 responses. These represented the 3 segments of our target market: full-time residents, people who live in Tucker and adjoining counties, part-time residents or second homeowners who visit the area on a regular basis, and visitors who come for day trips and or overnight stays. These segments describe the market that the Opera House would hope to draw from for customers. So the survey asked them to choose their preferred uses for the Opera House. In other words, what kind of activities or events would you want to attend at the Opera House? And the top 3 responses were live theater performances, live music concerts, and films. These we expected, but the list didn't end there. In addition, respondents wanted the Opera House to be used for special community events, comedy nights, children's events like puppet shows or magic shows, open mic nights, visual and performing art classes, and dance performances. But wait, there's more. Respondents wanted the Opera House also to be available for local community fundraisers, for weddings, private parties, religious services, reunions, and for rehearsal space for local performance groups and school groups. As Matt mentioned, the focus groups held earlier in December provided comments that supported these survey results. For instance, the rental property representatives in our area said that families often ask them for rainy day activities for kids. So when the weather isn't cooperating, it would be great to be able to take the family to a magic show. Our wedding and event planners said that demand exists in our area for an indoor venue for small to medium-sized group events. And our local performers noted that the Opera House could fill a niche for performing arts groups, since there is no comparable venue of this size in Tucker County. So from the survey responses and the focus groups, we could see clearly that there's an interest in and a need for a multi-use venue. One other notable data point from the survey helps to illustrate how revitalization of the Opera House would benefit our entire region. 82.5% of the survey respondents indicated that they were likely or very likely to eat out before or after attending an Opera House event. This means that most people coming specifically to an Opera House event would likely spend money on other things while in our area. And you might expect that the non-local visitors attending Opera House events would spend more money on things like lodging, shopping, and other meals. So we concluded that attracting arts and culture-minded visitors could produce significant economic rewards throughout the county. Just imagine each Opera House event driving customers into our restaurants, galleries, and shops in Davis, Canaan Valley, Parsons, as well as Thomas year-round. I leave you with that amazing image and hand it back to Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. That's really, really helpful. Just to kind of reiterate and reemphasize everything that Susan just described, here are 2 high-level takeaways we want to leave you with as regards the market study and the report. First, we need to cater to a really diverse audience with our programming. We have local residents from a wide variety of backgrounds with a wide variety of interests. People from Davis, Thomas and Parsons, but also Oakland and Elkins and Moorfield and Buchanan and Petersburg and Cumberland. Residents who grew up in this area, residents who moved here, and residents who spend just part of the year here. Then as we think about the visitors who might attend Opera House events, there's variation there too. We have families during the summer. We have seniors rolling in to Leaf Peep in the fall, and we have skiers in the winter. Now, not every event will appeal to every audience type, but every audience type should find events on our calendar that they would like. This sort of broad appeal is not just a financial necessity for the Opera House's bottom line. We believe that a varied slate of events is fundamental to our mission, and we believe that the arts can be a unifying force for our community. So it's critical that our programming calendar include affordable events that everyone can come and enjoy, regardless of their interests or background. So based on all of this research, what do we think is going to happen at the Opera House after its renovation? First of all, film. This is the building's historic use, right? It spent over 60 years serving the community as a movie theater. And our theater experts tell us that films are the easiest, most cost-effective way to reintroduce a venue like this to its community. And that's partly because films are accessible. All sorts of folks love watching a film on the big screen. And what sort of films would we show? Well, art films, documentaries, film festivals, special screenings, and all sorts of classic and second-run movies. Plus film events. Think of Disney sing-alongs or themed costume nights, annual holiday traditions that we would build up over time. Second, the Opera House will definitely host live entertainment. We believe that this space could be a terrific spot to see live performances, theater, dance, and especially music. Now, the Purple Fiddle has already done an amazing job over decades building an audience for live music in Tucker County down at the other end of Front Street. And in fact, we've had multiple conversations with John Bright, the longtime owner of the Fiddle. John is excited, as we are, about the prospects of using the Opera House to raise Tucker County's profile for the performing arts. He and we believe that a renovated Opera House would only expand our region's capacity for hosting live events by providing a venue for acts that might not be suited for the other spaces in the county. For example, high-profile bands that can fill the 400 seats that might be in the Opera House, or listening concerts, jazz and classical and art music, local and regional theater troupes or touring dance companies. Finally, the Opera House will be great for community events, wedding receptions, rehearsal dinners, anniversary banquets, conference receptions, and more. By renting this space for private functions, we hope to generate a key revenue stream, one that could make the difference between losing money and breaking even as a venue over the long term. Of course, these varied use cases require an architectural design that's flexible enough to shift from film production to stage shows to community use. And that's what our next steps are all about, moving from research into designing the actual building. And to talk us through that, I'd like to invite Dave Esch to join the call. Dave joined the Opera House board earlier this year, but I'll let him introduce himself. Dave?
Thanks, Matt. Like Matt said, I joined the board earlier this year. Matt's a long-term member. Susan, a little bit shorter. I'm kind of the newcomer. And likewise, in that group of folks who the survey went out to, my wife and I are still part-time residents of Davis, although her family's been visiting the area for 100 years coming up next year. So we are vitally concerned with the area. My background, I'm an architect. I've spent a significant part of my career in preservation architecture. So I know what it takes to work on buildings like this, the challenges, the funding streams, the way that you get projects to happen. Returning to our timeline, next steps. Matt was talking about, where are we? Go ahead and I'm not seeing the slide change. We are, there you go. Next steps.
I think there's a little bit of a lag, Dave.
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
So we did the market study, very important. And I think the board has done a fabulous job of teeing up this project for success. Because one of the things that I've always asked as an architect when I go to a client is, well, what do you want? And when you run into a client, a lot of clients, surprisingly, they're not really too sure. What the market study really gives us a basis, not just for the design, but for going out for fundraising and for having discussions like this about what do we want in order to build a facility that can serve all the purposes that we talked about earlier. We need to solve all the detailed design problems that renovating a historic property presents. We want, Matt talked a little bit about, and Susan talked a little bit about the flexibility of all these different uses. So next slide, just one example of the sort of challenge that we face. This is an end piece from one of our old Sutton Theater seat rows in the Opera House. As a test, I had the opportunity to restore this piece. And in a nutshell, it kind of sums up our approach, honoring what came before and repurposing it for a new era. But it illustrates well the depth of our pursuit. Questions we'll be addressing as we work through the concept design phase. Is it feasible to renovate this element? Is it possible to do that on the scale that we need? And is that affordable? Does it suit the purpose of the mission going forward? And if not, what are the alternatives? In this case, fixed seating might not be the right answer. We're talking about a multiplicity of different uses that we want to host in the Opera House. At the same time, wouldn't it be cool to have a row, maybe just one row, maybe two rows of the original seating in the back of the Opera House? So we're going to be asking these questions at the scale of the entire building. We knew that we needed an experienced expert to help us do this. The conceptual design work will be partially funded by a grant from the Tucker County Cultural District Authority, and again with funding provided by the Benedum Foundation. And after extended board discussion evaluation, we are excited to announce that we have contracted the Mills Group, a renowned West Virginia architectural firm, to help us develop a conceptual design for the Opera House. We really feel that Michael Mills and his firm are a perfect fit. Among the other things that their practice brings to our project is a combination of special expertise, both in preservation architecture as well as performing arts design. One especially relevant project of theirs is the renovation of the historic performing arts venue in Morgantown, the Metropolitan Theater. They also have a great working relationship with the State Historic Preservation Office, with whom we'll need to work hand in hand, and is a vehicle, hopefully, for getting additional grants and funding for historic property renovation. In fact, we're beginning this design work. We've had multiple discussions with Michael and his team. Their team will be on site this Friday, October 9th, taking measurements, kind of doing their base work to start preparing the design work. They'll also be conducting a design workshop with the Opera House board in the next few weeks, in which we'll work together with their team to create kind of continue this vision for the concept design. And then over the next few months, we'll be able to work together to create a concept design The results will be a floor plan, 3D renderings, other documentation, and we can't wait to bring this preliminary design back to you for your feedback. So we have a lot of work to do. We look forward to including everybody on this call and the rest of the community, keeping you in close touch with our progress. So back to Matt for more of what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave. We are so excited about reaching this major milestone in the project. And it's fair to say, I think, that we are now in formal pre-development for the Opera House renovation. It has been a long road, longer than anyone expected, 40 years ago to get here. But we're pumped to build on this recent momentum. We are not stopping here, and we're already planning for the work that will come after this conceptual design phase. So one of the key products of this design work will be a preliminary estimate of the total redevelopment cost. Right now, it's just a guess, and not even really a guess. But with that number in hand, we can work backwards and start to think through the funding stack that it will take to actually complete the work. For example, we'll be able to finalize our certification for historic tax credits with the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. Now, tax credits are likely to be a major source of funding for this project. Between federal and state credits, fully 45% of the qualified renovation costs could be covered. That is huge in a project like this. And Woodlands Development Group, which I mentioned earlier, has already started preparing this application on our behalf. Woodlands also continues to explore potential grant funding opportunities for the project. For example, Woodlands recently helped pull together our application for a state-administered rural revitalization grant, and we hope to hear back soon about that award. Finally, in terms of funding, we will need the support of a broad and generous community. We don't yet know that full redevelopment cost, but we do know that we'll never meet the need without your help. And it's not just in the future that we would ask for you to partner in transforming this building. Our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit. All donations we receive go directly back into funding the maintenance and redevelopment of this historic treasure. It takes your generous support to maintain a 120-year-old building. Last year, the downstairs furnace broke down unexpectedly, and we had to pay for a quick repair. Those things just happen with a building this old. And even when nothing's broken, it also takes your generous support just to pay the bills, to keep the lights on, keep the building heated, et cetera, et cetera. If you're willing to partner with us on this journey, please visit cottrillsoperahouse.org and consider making a donation. Any amount makes a huge difference. Donations are easy, quick, tax deductible, and completely secure. But if you can't make a financial gift right now, there are plenty of other ways that you can contribute. Maybe you're a graphic design whiz and you could help us prep a future presentation like this. Maybe you're a social media maven and could help us keep our Instagram feed flowing. Check us out on Instagram, by the way. Maybe you'd be willing to lend a hand when it's time to clear out this space to prep for construction. Toss us an email at info@cottrillsoperahouse.org and let us know how you'd like to help. Whether or not you can volunteer your time or make a contribution right now, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We hope we've kindled or maybe rekindled your enthusiasm for the project, and we would invite you to spread the word about the work that we've done and will be doing. We'll be posting a recording of this call to our website and to our social media feeds later this week. We'll also be sending out a newsletter next week covering much of this same content, so watch your email and pass it along to anyone you think might be interested. Finally, for all the latest news and for tons of interesting historical photos, I will plug again Cottrill's Opera House on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Before we go, we do want to hear any questions you might have, and we'll do our best to answer them. Ross, can I turn things over to you to be our MC for our Q&A?
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Ross Hopping. I'm a new board member. I'm joining you from downstairs in the Opera House in the storefront. Behind me is a bar that we believe is from the Warden Hotel. It was donated to us, and we would love to see it included in our restoration. At the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says chat. It looks like a cartoonish speech bubble. Please feel free to send me your questions directly by clicking on it, typing in the window that appears, and then you can enter to send the message. So we've had a few questions come in over the call. The first one is, when do you expect to open your doors? Well, if everything goes perfectly well, funding, planning, and construction, we hope to open in about 3 or 4 years, but that relies on a lot of factors, so things can change. How do you see the Opera House interacting and connecting with other local businesses? This is a great question. We hope to develop relationships with a number of businesses here in Thomas and Davis, Parsons, and throughout the region. And we're planning on starting some conversations in the upcoming weeks with those businesses to develop those relationships. Next question is, how family friendly will your shows be? Well, as Matt mentioned earlier, we're planning to offer a wide variety of programming that includes people of all ages and a wide variety of topics as well, whether it's movies or live shows. I'm interested in volunteering. How do I get involved? This is a simple one. Visit our website, cottrillsoperahouse.org, and you can find a registration form there or a form there to sign up to volunteer. Let's see, and are there other ways that I can follow your progress? So yes, other than our website, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We also have a newsletter that we'll be sending out every quarter. In about a week, we're going to try and recap tonight, as well as a few other things. You can find the links to our social media and sign up for our newsletter on our website. You can check our feed as well. So we have had another question come in. So Matt, you might be able to help out with answering this one too. Dave, perhaps you as well. So what did the study show about parking, traffic, and other support needed for the Opera House? And how willing are county and city officials to create and pay for infrastructure needed, and what is the timeline?
That's a great question, and it ties into the question about how we're connecting with the local community. This is not a one-stop project, right? We cannot make this venue successful on our own. And I think parking is a key example of why that's true. I mean, when the Opera House was running as an opera house 100 years ago, there were 425 seats here. If we tried to fill 425 seats today, there would be cars, running down 219 and going all the way to Davis. So the parking project and riverfront redevelopment plan that's already in the works, the city is working on it and their partners are working on it, is absolutely crucial and will need to be completed in the same time as the Opera House getting done. So we've opened those conversations and we're well aware that that's got to be a part of this project. This is a community redevelopment effort and definitely not just a single building. Dave or others, if you have other thoughts, welcome to jump in here.
I think you hit that pretty well, Matt. Thank you. Well,
Sure
it looks
thing.
like that's all of our written questions. I'm going to open up for general comment now, so people can actually unmute themselves if they have anything they would like to add here. You can look for that unmute button in the bottom left-hand corner, but please feel free to ask a question in the open room now. And we'll give ourselves a few minutes here. So anyone, any questions that you'd like to ask to the room? Well, thank you. Please feel free to email us.
This is Dave Ash. Let me just pile on Matt's response that he just gave. The board, the folks that we're reaching out to, the folks that have joined us tonight, we are embedded in the community, and we really intend to keep this group involved for the next 4 years, if that's what it takes, or whatever it takes. So the considerations that folks are bringing up, like parking, like access, this is exactly what we want to be hearing from people, is what do we need to put into the pot as we stir it to create the design and to make this thing a successful project.
Hi, this is Mary McGowan. I was the one who asked that question. I'm not sure, just for the purpose of everybody on the call, my husband and I have been renovating the old Duncan Funeral Home building. We've been doing that for the last 7 years. We kind of took a break for the last year, year and a half, but now we're back into it and we're going to have it completed in spring. And I raised the question about, town support and parking and general business support because, our building, will accommodate 250 people. Would love to do a restaurant, which would be a great tie-in to what you all are doing in the Opera House, but it's really challenging, even for current business owners who are in Thomas without the kind of support with parking and other infrastructure things. And so I do think it's a really key thing, particularly for the Opera House, which is going to obviously host very large audiences. How can that be supported without fairly significant changes and funding to make those changes?
Yeah, Mary, first of all, thanks for joining the call. And I think you're spot on. Ross and I were talking about this before the meeting. I think there's an opportunity as this project continues to gain momentum for us to partner with you and with some of the other business owners in Thomas, and to not that it's not a confrontational thing, but to have a united front and a recognition of the need that's coming to push forward those conversations with the commissioners and with the city and with state leadership and others to try to make sure that the infrastructure and support is here when the buildings are ready to receive their audiences. So would it be okay if I reached out to you and we can maybe start coordinating some of those conversations?
Oh, absolutely. Would love the opportunity and definitely hear what you're saying. And we all, want to band and work together. And there are definitely solutions. And I believe there's funding out there as well. Would love to have those conversations with you.
That's awesome.
Thank
Sweet.
you.
Well, you'll hear from me. Looking forward
Thanks.
to it.
Great. And great presentation, by the way. You guys really kudos to the terrific work really appreciate the presentation this evening.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. So one more question has come in. Will shows be accessible to all in the community? I think this could be read as two ways. So at all of our shows, the programming, we hope to offer a very wide range of programming, whether it's live performances or movies or other kind of events. So again, we're hoping from youngest of kids all the way up to seniors and everyone in between. We want to offer that wide range. And then on the other side here, the building will be restored as a fully ADA accessible building. We will have elevator and the theater will be completely accessible as well. So we hope to be able to have everyone in here in any capacity, and we want to make sure it's open for the community in that regard as well.
Well, and
Dave,
Ross, let me pile
Dave,
on to
I was
that.
going to invite you to say more.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with historic properties. We are going to get, I don't want to get out ahead of things. We are going to get state funding. We are hopefully going to get federal funding to help us renovate this project. The project needs to be fully accessible from a ADA point of view. And I think we as a board even need to talk about this presentation and how it becomes accessible per current day standards. But the building itself, we are planning, there will be an elevator. ADA requires that anybody with mobility challenges is able to enjoy the same show that everybody else gets. That means that you're not sitting in the back row, that you're sitting in the row that you close to where you want to be able to sit, or you're even sitting in the balcony if that's where you prefer. And that will be the standard that the new plan reaches, because it is a requirement from a state and a federal point of view in terms of code.
So I also overlooked a very glaring meaning of the word accessible in this instance as well, and that is geared towards financially accessible. And we do plan to offer a wide range of programming there as well to make sure that no one in our community is left out of accessing Cottrill's Opera House once it is restored. And Matt, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that as well, but we are cognizant of making sure that everyone can take part of our efforts.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it would be a tragedy if this building were restored and there was anyone in our community who didn't feel welcome and able to see a show here. I mean, on the one hand, I think one of the reasons film is such a central part of our vision is because it is so accessible and relatively affordable for us to put on. But I wouldn't put, you know, our aspirations for financial accessibility, they don't end there. We want everyone to be able to come and see shows here. There need to be shows that are affordable for every income range.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Well, does anyone else have any other questions before we move into our wrap up? You can unmute yourself and ask right here in the main room. Okay, well, really appreciate all the great questions. Thank you so much. This helps us to also understand what you're thinking and how we can better move forward too, to give us great insight in that regard. So without anything else, turning it back over to you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Ross, and thank all of you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We look forward to sharing much more soon at our next virtual event. We hope to have conceptual designs to share with you, but there'll be lots more to share between now and then too. So keep an eye on our website, on our social media, and we'll be in touch. Thanks again, everybody.